Hey, welcome back guys to Piero's Garage. This is going to be the first video to a series we're going to call Project Restore BMW 335i. The objective of this series is to improve the overall reliability of this vehicle. I'm taking this vehicle 6,000 kilometers on a solo trip down into the blistering hot Wild South known as Florida. And I cannot have this break down. So a lot of the items have already been addressed, but there are a few outstanding items such as the fuel injectors. So that's what I'm going to be covering in this video today. BMW went through 12 revisions on the injectors for the N54 engine. So that tells you alone that they ain't good if it took them 12 tries to get it right. So the latest revision is Index 12. So if you don't have the latest ones, if you have Index 11s, 10s, you're still on borrowed time. So the way these injectors fail are by leaking. Internally, they will drip into the cylinder when the car is off, which will create very rough starts, poor cold running. So once you start it up, you get in it, you drive, it's going to be misfiring like crazy. It can also foul spark plugs, trigger a bunch of misfire codes. It could also even possibly create cylinder wash, which is excessive fuel in the cylinder and it washes the film of oil and it could create bore scoring. And that's a pretty serious problem to your block. I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace these injectors, how to pull them out, change the seals, how to install them, and then also recode it to the car, because each injector, despite them being the same cc, like the flow rate, say they're 1,000 cc injectors, each injector has a very unique spray pattern, slightly different flow rate. Doesn't necessarily mean that the car won't run without the coating. It'll still run and it'll still drive. But if you want it to be optimal and efficient and run the best it possibly can, you're gonna have to get the number off of the fuel injector and then code that into the ECU by using either the Carly app, using NCS Expert. All right, enough talk. Let's dive right into this thing. So we're gonna first need to be able to access our fuel injectors, which are located under the decorative valve cover. It's not the actual valve cover, it's just a decorative piece. There's two bolts there. I believe they're HW5, Allen bolt. And then you have to remove your cowl, your air filter. I've already removed all that stuff, so this thing's ready to come right out. Next, this is already loose. And the next step in the process, now we have full access to our injector fuel lines, our injector harnesses. So I believe this is a 14 mil. It works best if you use kind of like a pipe wrench meant for brake lines. That way you don't strip the head. They shouldn't be crazy tight, but they should be snug. And then we've got the injector harness wires. Those simply pull up with a little flathead screwdriver. You got to kind of open it up a little bit and then pull it out. Be very careful not to break this because you need it to be secure with your new injectors. So we're gonna go ahead and pull all these out. One thing noteworthy is make sure your coolant temperatures are cold. If you do this on a hot engine, likely the gas is expanding and it wants to escape because it's under pressure. As soon as you crack this, fuel is gonna go everywhere and that's a possible fire hazard. So we're gonna have to do this times 6, remove the fuel injector here, here, and so on. Okay guys, so the only thing noteworthy is it's a lot tighter and really difficult to turn them off of the fuel rail. This, on this side on the fuel injector, is very easy to loosen by hand once you crack it loose. The other side, you're probably going to have to struggle a little bit, but we're almost there. Now we can start removing all the fuel injector harnesses. Very simple. I'm going to use a very small flathead and just get in there and open up the tabs. For the injector lines, you cannot pull them straight out. They're kind of locked in place until you open it up a little bit. So on the back side of the harness is where it's mounted. There you go. I'm just using a little pick. I couldn't find a little flathead, so this will do. We'll pull each one out very carefully. You do not want to break this. Injector number 6 is near impossible to reach, but using an angled screwdriver, you can simply access the clip on the back there. Otherwise, it's near impossible with this space. So I managed to get it removed. There you go. So the design, as you can see, there's this little tab right there, and the fuel injector has a hole. So that little tab pops into the hole and holds it in place. So the tab on the injector that needs to be pushed back is right there. If you pull too hard or bend it too far, it will break. Next step in the process before we can pull these fuel injectors, we got the grounding straps for the coil packs, which will totally impede us pulling a few of the injectors. So it's an 8 mil just on the top. Make sure you don't lose these nuts and do not drop them into there. It may be a little difficult to remove. Next up, we have the fuel injector brackets. 1 bracket per 2 injectors, so total 3 brackets. It's fastened down by, I think, an E8 bolt. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that up and make note on how this bracket was installed, because I believe there is a specific way that this gets installed, and you could possibly reverse it. So we'll make note of that, and then we can finally start pulling out our injectors. One thing I wanted to mention, guys, I have already replaced the valve cover. Mine was cracked. Notorious areas for cracking it are here, and all the oil will come into your galley here or in the middle of the inline 6. Anyhow, let's go ahead and remove these brackets and start pulling out injectors. Correction, it's actually an E10. Okay, here's our bolt. We're gonna go ahead and reuse that. And here's the bracket. So it seems like it went in with the U shape facing down. So this being bent will provide sort of like a spring loaded effect. We'll keep this in order somehow, somewhere. Let's get these pulled out too. Never work open holes in the engine or the fewest amount of open holes to the cylinder. So I would not recommend removing spark plugs or coil packs because things can fall into there. I think we're pretty much done for hardware, and there's no hardware that could possibly fall into there as we remove these injectors. So the next step is to use a sliding hammer to pull these injectors out. That is the only way. There may be some hacks or some shortcuts that you can do, but I do not recommend that because there is a possibility that you break the injector tip and it's stuck inside of the cylinder head. Okay, so I got a very simple sliding hammer tool. It's got the same thread pitch as the injectors and the same diameter, so we'll go ahead and thread that on nice and tight, and then we'll just use a sliding hammer. Oh, that came out very easy. Okay guys, here we have a fuel injector index number 1. So the last number on the top row is the index number. I had added this a few months ago because I was having some issues with one of my injectors leaking, and a buddy gave me this injector for free. And it actually solved the problem, but I just can't sleep at night knowing I have an index 1 injector in my engine. So that's why I went ahead and got the latest revision for index 12s. Okay, time for injector number 2. Oh, that's pleasant guy. What the? Dude, what the hell? Why is there so much oil? I don't know if I spilled oil during my oil change and it ran down. I don't see any signs of oil, but this is completely soaked in oil. Holy cow. Look at that. Just completely saturated. Ooh-wee, we got problems. We got big problems here, guys. So we're gonna have to figure out where that oil is leaking from. I don't see any cracks in the new valve cover. I don't see any spills. This may be old oil from my old valve cover, because I never pulled out this injector before. So maybe it was just residual oil sitting in the hole for the injector there. But let's take a look at the index number. Okay, we have an index 5. Let's keep moving. Injector number 3. Okay, I'm really happy that they're all coming out covered in oil. That's not good. Once again, look how much oil is on that. This has to be from my old valve cover, which was leaking, because there are no traces of oil on the new valve cover, and I only replaced that maybe like 2 months ago. So let's check the index number. Index 5. Injector number 4. Also covered in oil. Oh god, she's dripping. Okay, we'll check the index number on this one. Index 8. So we had 1, 5, 5.8. Injector 5. A little bit tougher. No oil on this one, well, minimal oil at least. We have another index 8. Okay, I have a theory. I think the 6 injector is the hardest to pull. Why? If you ever run these engines without that plastic cover over top and you don't have the cowl on, all of the water from the rain will run down your windshield, come here, drip right into the top of the engine there, and it will sort of seize the injector in that area. I know this because one time I had no cowl. I had no, think of it like an eaves trough on your house. It's supposed to collect all that rainwater. And then I didn't have the cover. The car sat in the driveway, it poured, and then the next day I brought the car in the garage, opened the hood, and this whole thing was full of water. And this one will see most of the water, and it will sit here the longest too. So I'm having problems pulling this out, but I'm pretty sure we'll get it. Hey, oh yeah. Okay, proof or my theory. As you can see, this is the only injector that has white crud buildup from corrosion. So this injector was completely submerged in water at one point, not past the Teflon seal, which is in the combustion chamber, but that's why this had a hard time coming out. And what is our index level? Index 5. So we had what? I think like 3 5s, 2 8s, and 1 number 1. All right, guys, the moment you've been waiting for. So I've got all 6 injectors on my table ready for service. If we take a closer look, on the top line, the last 2 digits confirm the index number, so we have 12. This is the latest revision provided by BMW for an OEM application. These are a second-hand set. They are used. They came off of a BMW 135i. And my best guess is that these were replaced under BMW's 12-year warranty period. So that was free parts, free labor for the 12 years. If you didn't take advantage of that period and that warranty, then there's a good chance that your BMW has old, outdated injectors that are inevitable to leak and fail. So unfortunately, my BMW did not take advantage of that. I purchased the vehicle outside of the warranty period and found out the hard way through misfires and rough running that I have the old injectors. So I picked these up used. The only catch here is I need to do my maintenance on it. So if we take a closer look, we've got the seal. So this black little ring, I believe, is made out of Teflon, and it needs to be cut off with an X-Acto knife. So I'm going to be using this very carefully. I'm going to try not to nick the surface, although I don't think it'll really matter too much if I do nick it because the Teflon seal will be doing all the sealing. In addition to that, if we take a closer look at the tip of the injector, you can almost see like a circular imprint as if it's bottomed out. So I believe in combination of the injector being compressed into the cylinder head, it bottoms out into a machined area which matches this tip, creates a seal, and then you've also got your Teflon seal over here. I've got brand new Teflon seals. These are aftermarket, you can get OEM, it's just this came quicker. And then we've got these little rings that go onto the injector and clip on, and if we take a closer look, there's a mesh of wire in there, a bunch of random pieces of wire. So I believe this gets crushed while you install the injectors. So those brackets will push down onto the injectors, bottom out onto the mating surface. This will bottom out. It's all machined and it's all measured perfectly to function and work. Let's get started. These Teflon seals, they need to be stretched in order to install. They do sell special tools. It's quite expensive to buy, so I'm gonna use the old school pen trick. All right, guys, so I'll show you how to change one of the seals. We'll probably just time lapse through the others because it's just repetitive and you guys have probably an attention span of a gnat. All right, so here we go. We got our X-Acto knife. And let's very, very carefully, slowly cut the Teflon seal. Very easy to cut. Okay, that was way easier than I initially thought. Okay, here we go. So here's our Teflon seal. There it is, very easy to cut. It almost looks beveled in the middle. We're gonna clean that up, make sure there's no dirt in there. The tips, we've already kind of cleaned them up. One thing I wanted to note, it's very tempting, but do not take a wire wheel on your drill and try to clean this. There's a good chance you may damage the microscopic hole where the fuel comes out. So just clean it with a rag, put some gasoline on it or whatever. You could ultrasonic clean it, or just wipe it with a microfiber towel. That's probably adequate. Now we'll get our brand new seal. Here's a new seal. As you can see, it's tiny and it is so small that is not gonna go on without some serious stretching here. So let's see if we can do this trick with the pen. There's so many people, this is nothing new. There's so many people doing this, so. Okay, so there's the seal. We're just going to force it on. It seems to be slipping on quite nicely. It hurts like hell. And then I did see some people using the cap to, nope, that's not a good idea. So we're just gonna let that stretch a bit. We're gonna keep pushing it and we'll let it sit for a little bit. Okay guys, so I got a bright idea. I brought a tool that does not belong in the garage. It's a hairdryer. I've never seen this before. No one's done it before. So I'm gonna try to heat up the Teflon seal with a blow dryer. Why did I pick a blow dryer? Because the heat's not that hot to melt it. So we're gonna try to use heat to our advantage. Let's see. All right, I'm not sure if that did anything, but let's see if it, oh yeah. Hey, it worked. Don't need more stretching. Here we go, I've got the seal completely over the pen's body. No longer on the tip, so that's as wide as I can stretch it. Should go on, let's see. Hey, there we go. I may have stretched it too much. I won't go as far the second time around, so we are learning here. This should naturally shrink, so I've been told. Some people say use the pen cap to tighten it. Okay, we're just gonna let that sit. Let's see if we can use our lessons learned from the first one and try to implement it this time. So I know how much to cut, how much pressure to put on. This time I won't stretch it as much. I think I went a little overboard there. Get our nice pen, clean it off, apply some pressure. Let's flip the seal, stretch it again, flip the seal again, stretch it. Similar stretch, unfortunately. A little bit bigger than I hoped, but we'll just kind of let it sit. It'll shrink a little bit, and then maybe we can get the pen cap over it. Injector number 3. Okay, there we go, third one's on. We will squish them after. Injector number 4, number 5. Stab myself with the pen. What are the odds? I guess we can say we've literally put blood, sweat, not tears yet, into this project. There we go, number 6. Okay, so I've got all new seals on. They're all loosey-goosey, as you can see. There's a lot of slop in it. So technically, if we use the same cap for what stretched it, this is obviously larger than the body, but it's very close. We need to account for the thickness of the Teflon seal, so this needs to be compressed a little bit, sort of by hand, or finding a slightly larger pen cap, and then we should slide it over. But I'm going to cut this tip off and then attempt to compress the seals. The further you push the injector into the cap, the tighter it should get. As you can see, it's more narrow towards the tip. Let's see how it works. All right, so I'm just going to chop this off, and let's see if we can get this on. Going on nicely. Starting to get a little tough here. I keep pushing, keep pushing. There we go, okay. So we're gonna let this thing do its magic. It's squishing it. Hopefully it squishes it enough. I don't know. In the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and install these little collars. Let me just wipe this up, make sure there's no dirt on it. Collars on. Take a nice close-up of this. Okay guys, so as the pen cap is doing its job, I'm just going to keep pushing it further in until it completely stops. That means it's as tight as it's going to get. And then I'm going to have to pull the cap off. And I have limited time to install this because the Teflon seal may want to expand when the cap is removed. So now is a good opportunity to take the flow characteristics of the injectors. Each injector has slightly different flow characteristics, as I mentioned earlier in the video. So these are the two important numbers that we need, 575 and 238. If we look amongst all the other injectors, you can see they are completely different. 575, 562, 585, 575, and so on, right? So this is gonna be the order I'm gonna install it. Number 1 being the front of the engine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, back of the engine. So I've labeled it here just so I don't lose track. Number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And I've labeled all the numbers. So these values will go to INPA, where we'll tell the computer and code the computer to know what the injector's flow characteristic is. And these were laser printed from the factory when these were made. Okay, so it's very important. You can still see the number after you install the injector. It's kind of hard to see, but it just makes more sense to capture this information now. So let's see if I can get this in any further. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I think that's good. It's doing its job. We'll let it sit for another couple minutes and then we're gonna pull it off and go ahead and install number 1. And we'll do the exact same thing for each injector. And one thing that's worth doing is making sure the inlet of the injector is clean. So I'm just spraying some gasoline, which I have in a little spray bottle here. And I'm using a Q-tip just to kind of clean it out and then use an air compressor to blow it out. I don't want any debris entering the injector and potentially clogging it. And do not forget these little collars. So I'm going to install those on each one as I progress. Okay guys, here we go. Let's pull the cap off, and like I said, we have limited time. Let's see if it's tight. Looks pretty good, I think. Okay, let's try and get it in. The injector numbers have to face towards the spark plug. Press it down by hand. We should hear an audible click. Okay, there was some resistance while installing it, but the most important is to see that little tab. As you can see, it's completely bottomed out. So that's what we want. Looks good. I got the collar on. I didn't forget it. And if we just make sure it's fully installed, it's not going any further, so I think we're good. And we'll let it sit, and we'll get the next injector on, and then we can install that bracket. So this little piece, we'll bolt it down, and then we can put our fuel lines on. Moving back, the second injector, we'll do the exact same thing with the pen cap. Yeah, I'm gonna try a different pen cap, which is larger. Try and make it small enough, the tighter pen cap. Take a closer look. Okay, as you can see, this pen cap is larger. You can see the seal floating around, but it's gonna compress it just enough so I can get my tighter pen cap. Remember that Teflon seal has a thickness to it. So unfortunately, this pen cap being the same diameter as what stretched it, plus the thickness of the seal, won't allow this cap over top. So I found another pen cap, which is slightly larger. And we'll see if it does its job. I mean, it worked the first time around. I did the exact same thing. While we're at it, let's get that collar. We cannot forget these. So as we wait around, simply snap this in place. There we go. As you can see, all that crushed wire in there. Very interesting design. I think this bottoms out, gets crushed. Okay, let's see if it did its job. We grab our pen cap, which we know is tighter. There we go. Force it a little bit. Okay, that's as far as she's gonna go. We'll let it do a thing, let it sit for a couple minutes. Completely bottom it out, let it sit for another couple minutes, pull the cap off, install, and we're gonna repeat the exact same thing for every injector. I don't think I need to show you guys this. So I've completely compressed it. We'll let her sit for a bit, and then we'll go ahead and install it. Okay guys, here's the second injector. We'll pull the cap off and inspect the Teflon seal, make sure there's no gouges or damage to it before we install it. Data facing out, go in nice and center, and we're gonna try and push that in. Hey, there she is. Okay guys, so it's just a matter of repetition here. Let's go for the third injector. We're having troubles with injector number 6, and we're going back to the theory that I mentioned earlier in the video, that the 6th injector, if you don't run the cowl, rainwater will enter into the center of the engine here and lightly corrode the top of the cylinder head there, especially if you don't have the valve cover decorative piece on there. So I've tried to clean that hole up a little bit, recompress my seal, and I'm gonna try again. Okay guys, so as you could tell, I got all 5 in perfectly with very minimal hassle. If we take a look, it almost looks like there's some buildup on the surface there. So we're gonna have to clean that out with some sort of small brush. So I do have a brush for cleaning HVLP body paint guns. So I may be able to get that in there, but I gotta make sure I don't drop anything in there. Okay, we're gonna try and clean this up a bit and try again. Yeah, I'm gonna use this bristle, try and clean it. There's no way I can possibly drop it because it's on this keychain. Make sure if this happens to you, that you have something to pull it out. Otherwise, forget about it. It's gonna fall in the cylinder. Okay guys, so I spent some time cleaning up the injector 6 port. I used a wire brush and I used some solvent to try and clean it up. Then I blew it off with an air compressor just to make sure that there was no debris where the new injector is supposed to seal. This has been sitting for quite some time compressing the seal. So let's see if we can get it on this time around. Okay, I've never had to do that before, but reverse hammering seems to have done the trick. Let's just get a nice close-up view of all the injectors installed so they don't fully bottom out on that tang. You can feel the injector bottom out, and I believe it's the collars that bottom out, not the tang. I think that tang is for lining up the injector only. And as you can see, number 6 is in finally. It was a bit of a challenge, but we got her in. So now we can get these brackets on and the fuel lines, and we'll keep on trucking. I've already cleaned off these hoses. They were clean to begin with, but I had to make sure that there's no dirt in there. I've also cleaned the fuel rail. We're going to simply bolt it on. That's all it is. Okay, time to put the brackets on, and then we'll crank everything down real tight. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, brackets go in U-shaped facing down, so it applies pressure on the injectors. Okay, we're gonna install it with the bolt attached to the bracket. I think that's the easiest way. Okay guys, time to crank down all the fuel lines. Now, let's get the grounding straps on, all the coil packs, connect everything again, and we can start it up and check for leaks. And then next, we're gonna coat it. Now's a good opportunity to get the fuel injector harness pigtail plugged into each injector. And now for the grounding straps. We got that little 8mm nut on the top. And we'll just tighten these 8 mils down nicely. One thing I did want to make note of, the grounding strap does have an area where it's supposed to sit within the valve cover. There's a little notch in it. So each wire should be facing the front of the car. You could install it sideways, but that's not correct. I don't think there's going to be any issues, but if you want to put it back in the way it's supposed to, that's how you should put it. Okay guys, so whenever I finish a project, I like to always go over everything and ask myself, did I tighten this, etc., and feel things around. So I've got every fuel line on, bolted on. I've triple checked it, every single one, all the way until the 6. We got all the coil packs in, they're all plugged in. We got all the injector harnesses plugged in as well, all the way until number 6 in the back there. And we got the 3 grounding straps, all have been tightened. So that's perfect. And that's all we really removed in terms of what will affect the vehicle from starting up. So I think we can go ahead and start it up. I know the injectors are not coated yet. That's fine. We will coat it right after. I'm just checking for leaks right now. Then we'll jump into the coating process. So we're gonna start this thing up. Hopefully it doesn't catch on fire. We're gonna prime the pump a few times just by pressing the ignition switch on and off a few times. That'll get a lot of the air out of the lines and pressurize the fuel rail, pressurize all the injectors, etc. And then it should fire up. I did double check everything, so I don't anticipate any leaks, but you never know. All right guys, we had a little bit of a funny first start up there. There was too much air in the fuel lines. Priming it didn't really do anything to help it because the injectors aren't opening up until it first starts up. So that's normal. If you guys are changing all 6 injectors, expect it to run this way. But man, once that air escaped, it was running smooth as a kitten. And we haven't even coated the injectors yet. So we're gonna jump into the cockpit right now. And I'm gonna show you guys using BMW's standard tool. They use this in the factory. It's called INPA. You can download this free online off of Beamer Geeks. You're gonna need a K-DCAN cable, and that's pretty cheap to buy. You can buy like these replica copies, or you can buy like an authentic one, which is a little bit more money. Once you get it all set up, you guys can do coding, read codes. You can read far more codes than you can with your basic standard scanner. So enough talk, guys, let's jump in there and get coding. Here's a pro tip, make sure you got your battery charger on because we're gonna need some time, and we all know BMW batteries deplete extremely quickly when they're not running. It's probably gonna be maybe 5-10 minutes, and then that battery discharge warning is gonna come on. So this will definitely help us keep afloat and let us work properly without the software losing connection and possibly creating issues while we're in all those settings. So here's my KDCAN cable. It says it's compatible with IMPA. It's got a switch to switch the pins. So this is compatible on multiple vehicles. First step, we're gonna need to install it into the OBD2 port. Once it lights up, that's a good sign. We're gonna need power to all our modules. So basically get all the lights illuminated. You can turn your fan off, turn your headlights off, just to reduce the amount of drain on the battery. We do have the battery charger on there, of course, but we don't wanna stress things out. Here's our software, which I've downloaded. We'll open this up, and as soon as it detects power from all the modules, it should give us an indication here. So it's gonna say battery on, etc. Let's wait that out. This is how you know you're connected successfully. Cable detected, yes. Ignition on, yes. So you're ready to rock. If these don't turn on, you have a problem with either your cable, it could be a bad cable, or it could be the latency time settings in your device manager. So you'd have to go into control panel, device manager, change all those settings, but we're not going to cover that in this video. Just a heads up if you guys are having issues with that. So we need to go into E90 chassis because we are E92. So we will press F3 right here for E90. Click on engine because the injectors are buried within engine, and we have to select our engine, which is N54. Okay, and the next step, we want to go into system, which is F9. So the injectors are going to be buried in here. Once we're in here, we're going to want to go to injector rate comparison. The only way to access that is by pressing Shift and F4. So we'll do that. Boom. Okay, here are all of our injector settings. As you can see, injector 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these are the readings. So if you take a look at this paper towel, which I've wrote all the values from our injector 1 through 6. We got our first digit on the injectors, the second digit on the injectors. This is the first value. If you notice, we have like 575. It's actually 57.5. Also same with this, 238 would be the second column, which is 2.14. So in that case, it would be 2.38. So that's just how INPA translates it, but on the injector it's written this way. So we're going to follow the same decimal format. So to change this, we would simply go down to injector 1. But before doing so, I wanted to see, for curiosity's sake, if the injectors were coded correctly the first time around. So these are the old injector ratings. So 579, 215, 57.9, 2.14, that's close enough. My understanding is that the second number will be generally off by 0.1. If I try to put in 2.15, it's just going to round down one or something like this. I don't know why. I don't know the reason. It's just how it is. For my curiosity purposes, I can confirm that the old injectors were coded correctly. This is previous to my ownership. It was just my curiosity. So we'll now go back down to the index 12 injectors here. So to recode, we have to go to injector 1, and now we can change these values. So the first value, the way they interpret it, is energy comparison, which is completely useless to me. So we're going to go 57.5. Second digit, we got 238. So that would be, you hit OK, boom, it changed. Okay, moving on to the second injector now. Very simple, guys. We're just going to repeat this process. So injector 2. So that is perfect, guys. We are done our job here. So I believe all we have to do here is now hit back, and it should be done. If I go back into it, let's confirm if it retained that value. Shift F4. It's as simple as that. So we can hit back. We will properly exit this, and now we will simply end. We will quit. So the coding is all done. Let's see how she runs. Any different? Let's find out. It may start slow because the battery could be depleted, but let's see. She's a little dead. So the next video will be changing the battery, and I'm going to show you guys how to code in a new battery. First impressions, seems to be idling pretty well. Oh wow, that's a quite aggressive idle. Could just be because the battery is low, and I did have the battery disconnected for the injectors. As you can see, we have an active steering warning, so that just needs to be calibrated in a sense. So as soon as we start driving and we turn the wheel full lock, left, full right, it should be okay. So now for the fun part, let's take this puppy for a quick drive and see how she does. All right, let's hit the road. And hopefully this active steering goes away. Normally it does, we'll see. The steering is uber heavy right now because the active steering is not working. And that generally happens when you disconnect the battery. So far it runs a lot better, I can say. It's quite smooth, and our active steering light just went away on its own. I didn't even have to go full lock left or right. Oh, this feels, I'm not gonna lie guys, this feels a lot smoother already with the new injectors. My other injectors were probably leaking, had issues, maybe bad spray patterns and whatnot. So we're still warming up here on our defi gauges. What do we got? We're only at like 55 Celsius oil temp, so we won't give her the beans yet. We're just gonna drive it nice, make sure everything's working. I didn't find any fuel leaks, so oh baby, that is smooth. I'm very pleased with this purchase. Injectors make a world of a difference, my friends. Okay, let's go through some of the gears here. Nothing crazy yet, we're still warming up. Okay, let's give her some sauce now. Not all the sauce, but we'll give her some sloppy seconds. Yeehaw baby, engine malfunction. I do get this thing that pops up every now and then. It doesn't actually put it into limp mode. I still have all my power, but I believe it is a type of overboost protection. It's letting you know I've overboosted. So I mean, all you gotta do is turn the car off and she's gone. So we're gonna have to get that sorted out later. But like I said, this only comes up once in a while. Only if I go over around like 1.3 bars of boost, I'll notice it come on. If we stay below that, we're good to go. And we're in first. So I probably could have shifted a little earlier there. We'll give that another shot. All right, let's give that another go, but we'll shift earlier. Oh! That is a wrap. So we can conclude this project as successful. So we installed the injectors, we coated it, it's running like a dream. It pulls really, really hard, and I'm so satisfied with it. So in the next video, we'll get to the cooling system. We've already replaced the water pump a few months ago. Unfortunately, I didn't record that, but there are a few items still left to address in order to make this thing a little more reliable, such as the coolant lines. We're gonna replace some of the rad hoses. We're gonna inspect a lot of the other components. We're gonna change the oil filter housing gasket. Until then, see you next time, guys.